Auto chess is unfortunately nothing like chess apart from having a checkered board. That's literally
Yeah.
it has the chessboard basically. It was a bit fun. It got a lot of people to install Dota and play that. It
Yeah.
was successful.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Fortnite is not the junk food of first-person shooter, because you're right, and I know the difference between first-person shooter and other games. It's the junk food of what is it? The battle royale games, right? Like the battlegrounds games, like all the games where you get like dropped somewhere and you shoot people up, like whatever that is, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
not really
just,
my type of game. I'm too old and slow, you know. I don't have the twitchy reflexes to
yeah.
play
I
that type of
literally
game.
like stopped playing that game when I couldn't get over a hill, like I literally could not get over a hill in Fortnite. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
We are officially live on my stream as well. Lesson number 2 for me today. So I did just get full disclosure. I just got done working with Easy with Aces, Finton. I don't want you to be jealous.
No, it's cool. It's cool. You know, no hard feelings.
Okay, good, good.
The knowledge should be shared is my take.
I totally agree. And although you two actually may end up in a group together, I think you guys are roughly the same strength. What is your rating on chess.com?
1,000
Yeah, okay.
right now. Yeah.
So, I just pulled up your profile and a game you were just playing against Matthew FF. Maybe you don't want me
Yep.
to look at that game, but
No, you can look at it. It's it didn't go so great. Matthew kind of kicked my butt, but
okay. Um, I'm gonna bring it up and I'm gonna invite you to the board right now.
sure.
Sorry, that just moved your board over. I'll let you fix your stream. My bad. Having two
Oh,
boards
yeah,
on
no worries.
chess.com always does that, so I'll let you adjust that before we start.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's fine.
and we'll keep 2 tabs open from now on, so you won't have to keep adjusting it. It'll make it easy for
Yeah,
you.
sure, sure.
Cool.
All right.
Well, should we like say hello to each other on camera with everybody here? Because I was just sharing the story with my viewers of when you and I first kind of got in touch. It was after the 2018 World Championship, right?
Yeah, I was watching. Yeah.
And were you a fan of chess before that, or
Uh,
was that kind of
I'm
the tipping point?
I've always I've always really liked chess, but I haven't watched it much or followed much. I would say that was probably tipping point for like getting more interest in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um,
Anyway, so you reached out on Twitter, but you've been following it more since then. And what was it about the World Championship? If you don't mind me, is it just that the fact that it always gets people's attention because it's the 2 best players in the world, or what was it about?
Yeah, I think it just pulled a lot of attention from different people.
Yeah.
Some other friends of mine were watching as well, and yeah, I ended up really enjoying the commentary. You know, it was some good commentary on that World
By
Championship.
Robert Hess.
Uh,
By Robert Hess, not by me. I know it's okay.
well, I think the two of you work really well together. It's fun to listen to. Since
If you want to
I've
get a lesson,
obviously
good.
for your viewers, I mean, I've done commentating work in Dota, so I'm very familiar with like doing casting. I
Okay.
cast the World Championship in Dota 4 years in a row, and I've done quite a bit of casting overall. So to me, it's fun to watch another game that I really like.
Right, people cast other sports, right? That's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's all. It makes me feel even better that you enjoyed our commentary. That's awesome. Um,
yeah,
Well, and then, when we first launched Pogchamps, you were kind of on the short list of, variety or other game streamers that we already knew were interested in chess. And, as soon as we decided we were doing a second one, I was like, we gotta get Niklas an invite, and you accepted, and now our marriage is happy and everyone's together. So,
yeah, I'm very happy to be part of it this time.
um,
It's the first one was really really cool. I didn't like follow it super closely because I was still streaming like 10 hours a day and stuff, but it was a lot of fun. Many fun clips coming out of it too.
yeah, almost too many fun clips. Yeah, it was nutty. Well, how do you feel about your chances right now? So you did a stream yesterday with you got coaching with Levy.
Hmm.
This is your second coaching stream.
Yeah, this is my second.
Okay.
Right now, I think my chances are pretty much nil, but I'm gonna change that by playing a lot in the
Okay.
upcoming week.
Okay.
So I haven't really played much. I don't know if you like saw my profile, but I haven't played many games overall at all. So I just need to get games in, and I'm thinking today, tomorrow, the week coming now, I'm gonna
Yeah.
spend a lot of time. Play some 5-6 hours a day at least. And then maybe I can speak something about my chances. But right now, I just don't have the experience.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, there's some different ways we could start with a lesson like this to kind of not necessarily quiz you, but kind of gauge areas that you might want to work on over the coming weeks. I very often when I'm working with a new student, I would go full Russian Soviet method and start with the end games, kind of break you down, make sure you understand all the basic checkmates and some basic kind of king and pawn stuff, which is good. And I think overall, if you and I were doing like regular chess streams over the years and there wasn't a tournament coming, that would be the reset we would do. But I feel like one of the things I've learned working with I've worked with Thor, the Mountain, and now Finton, and then some other like private ones. Is I want to make sure you guys are feeling good about your openings. That there's like some basic kind of like critical thinking stuff that you're doing, like a check down list as you're playing, things that you're going through that are most useful right away, and probably the most applicable to what you're going to do to get ready over the next week, which is play a crap ton of chess, right? Make sure that you're you see the usefulness of like solving puzzles and your tactical pattern recognition. So I feel like we should start with some of that and just kind of go through your openings. I see you played this guy Matthew FF. I see he's in your chat. So apparently he's stronger on Lichess. He says he's 1700 over on Lichess, so he's only 1200 here, but still seems like a pretty good game for you for us to go over, right? This was a tough loss for you.
Yeah, it was kind of brutal. He definitely got me.
Well, in the end though, you actually. So did you lose this position, the one that we're looking at together? Did you lose it on time? I mean, actually, wait, you're not on the final position like I am. I'll go back.
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. Did I move it as well?
If you go to the final position,
oh yeah, now it moved us.
With King G2, are you did you lose on time here?
No, I didn't. I resigned because we were gonna do this session, but
so
the position felt
It's my fault. It's honestly awesome. It's the first loss you blame on your coach. I feel so honored.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's back through and let me ask as we go. So, like, is the Karo Khan with C6 a part of your repertoire normally, or is it where are you at right now in terms of your openings?
So where I'm at is that I until yesterday literally didn't have any openings, and then Levy went over the London system and the Caracon quickly with me.
Okay.
And I barely remember fully what to do with it, but now I'm trying to get an understanding just by playing them a little bit, attempting to.
Okay. So I've noticed Levy's been teaching a lot of people the London system, so that's good. So that means as white you would get with D4, and then depending on what they do,
bishop.
You're gonna play knight here and bishop out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Knight and bishop.
Okay, good. And the Carocon is totally fine. I actually was just working on this a lot with I was just working on this with Easy with Aces, and sorry, got to give a shout out because Levy just rated with 3,800 viewers. So that's that's a lot of viewers. Shout out to everybody just coming in. We are about to start a Pogchamps lesson with Niklas, WagamamaTV. He's Dota basically world champion, at least world champion commentator. Can I just say you're a Dota world champion? That sounds so cool.
No, I'll hold off on that title.
Okay,
you need to win a TI to do that.
Okay, good. So... No, you passed the test. You can't just claim to be world champion. I've tried to do that with things. But, okay, jokes aside, seriously, thank you, everyone, for being here. Shout out to Levy for the raid and everyone, and tune in, because the lesson's just getting started. So, all right, a couple options here. Do you want to play actively right now and have me kind of listen in and give a little bit of advice? We can play unrated. Do you want to go over some of these games that you just played, forgetting the Matthew FF game because it ended early, you were trying to come to me? What would you like to do for us to kind of map this?
I think we could start by just looking at any of these games. I also played against Stormstormer earlier today, a friend of mine who also is a Dota player who likes chess as well.
Okay.
So yeah, any of my
game.
recent games
right
today.
Here. Let's go Stormstormer. Actually, you played a number of games against Stormstormer.
We played a few, yeah.
Okay.
He generally has beaten me all the time, but today was actually the first day that I won
Okay.
against him as
Yeah,
well.
let's look at it. Let's look at the game you won. I'm going to invite you to that board right now.
Sure.
And again, everyone, thanks for being here. Really appreciate the raids. Hit the follow button. We're going to be doing more chess here for the next few hours. So, all right. So you won this game against. So he's a Dota player. This is awesome.
He is. He's top 30 in Europe right now, so he's a very good player as well.
So you played.
And I may not be a Dota world champion or something, but I have at least been rank 1 in the world once.
Okay.
I've done that. So
I'm not a world champion at anything either, but I was also ranked at one point in Over the Hill magazine. So anyway, nice. No, I'm kidding. Bishop f4. You played the London Bishop f4. That's awesome. And this is what Levy taught you, right?
It is.
Okay, so let's see how this went. Knight to c6, e3, and now h6. Okay, bishop d3. So this is all good. What you're developing. What he's done is not typically standard for black.
Yeah.
But we're not going to worry about his moves right now. I want to just get to a critical moment and see how you handled it. Very good. You just backed up. h5. Now you played h3. This is good. So your opponent is breaking a lot of principles here, rushing the pawns forward instead of developing pieces, right?
Yeah, so now we know he can't castle on that side, right? Like,
exactly.
It's unsafe.
That's actually a super good heads up recognition, right? Because half the battle when we're developing our pieces is not just developing them to where we think they're good now, but where we think they're going to be in 5 moves from now, right? In 10 moves from now. One of the biggest mistakes people make is sticking robotically to the opening. Like, okay, I learned a London and my pieces always go here with tunnel vision, right? Instead of recognizing if your opponent does something kind of off the beaten path and that changes the game, it's actually really important to recognize early, right? So one thing you might do we'll see what you did. But one thing you might do in that vein is actually after you develop, try to maybe attack on the queen side. So this is a good point of recognition. When he played f6, what were the things you considered?
I just felt like I've gotten my pieces out on my king side, but I want to do stuff with my queen side.
Okay. But the reason
honestly,
I asked
I considered going c4 instead of c3.
You're a genius. We just got here. You're already a genius. Well, that's where I'm going with this. But you didn't play it, so you're not a genius.
I didn't play it. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I could have been. Could have been.
Could have been a contender. No, I'm kidding. So the reason I asked that is because I literally just gave that soapbox speech about don't be a robot and have tunnel vision. If your opponent does something that's off the beaten path, be able to adjust. This is going to happen a lot in Pogchamps, and it's an important critical thinking stage anyway. So f6 actually gives you another tactic you should play for here, and I'm going to point that out in a second. But before we do that, that's exactly the move I was looking for. Because by what you said earlier, when black went kind of all in with this crazy bad pawns, you said this king clearly is not going to hide over here. That means the only side of the board he can probably find safety is this side of the board, right? Which means naturally, if you start to open up that side of the board, you're going to create opportunities. A rook on an open c-file, working with this bishop could actually be devastating, right? Playing c4 opens up the queen to come to different squares that might be attacking the queen side. So your recognition of the fact that you probably should have played for c4 instead of c3 is 100% correct, because c3 is an example of a robotic move. This is exactly the London structure that you want when black is castled short. Because in this position, you've got that strong center Levy taught you, which allows you to focus on an attack over here, right? But in this position, he's not going to go over there. He's going this way. So opening up this side of the board and coming over here is a fantastic idea. Now, all that said, when your opponent played f6, you have an immediately strong move that you could have played. What was it?
Bishop to g6.
You're a genius times 2. Exactly. And where does he go?
Yeah,
he goes here.
Because he has to move his king, so he can't castle.
Yep. Forgive me, I haven't eaten lunch today. I've been streaming for a while. I got almonds here. It's my superfood. That's my lunch.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good.
Good stuff.
All good.
So, yeah, bishop g6 is just great. And you could even literally give a check and then just go back to a standard c4. Just open the position, right? You don't even have to do anything to follow it. And I say that because a lot of times people make the mistake of, when your opponent is clearly in a bad position, now all of a sudden you're in this like all-in mode and you feel like you have to find checkmate right away, which you don't have to, right? You could play
your
for
eyes
c4.
go red. You want to go for blood. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want, right? You're like a shark in the water. You smell blood. but sometimes you got to be patient. And I think that if you had played for c4 or e4, the knight comes out. This is going to be an easy win.
Yeah, I mean, when his king moves, his bishop is also blocked from one of the paths, so it looks really hard to play for him.
So one of the things I want to focus on today as we get into these games, hit the reset real quick before we dive more into this one and the future ones, is try to make sure as we go over it, there's going to be specific move advice. Like on this exact position of this game, you should have played this move. Okay, It's helpful. Maybe we draw some very specific patterns from that. But overall, like, that's not the goal. The goal is we're going to try to figure out the most useful way to apply whatever the critical thinking was about that position that could be applied to maybe hundreds of future positions, right? So the reason I wanted to point out this check, and certainly you shouldn't miss it in a game because your opponent gave you, this horrible opportunity for him. But the move that's actually more important for me to focus on is what you already pointed out earlier, that when you recognize your opponent has nowhere else to go, start putting your eggs in that basket. C4, the fact that you found that in our analysis here is more important to me because that's going to be something that can repeat. The idea that your opponent has sort of butchered a structure, butchered some weaknesses on one side of the board, and you recognize that and start to plant the seeds early for a great attack. Because you can't always control that your opponent will make a horrible blunder. If they do, you want to cash in. But this is the kind of move with the right follow-up plan that's going to win you games against a lot of people, right? Even if he hadn't played f6. So
yeah, I feel you quite often come to a point in like mid-game or what to call it, where you can actually see quite early where they're going to end up castling. So I guess you have time to, think about your positioning on the pieces for that.
Right. Yeah, and that's important because if you're asking yourself that question, you're already doing better than a lot of chess players. Like not just saying, let me develop my pieces and then think about it later. So you played c3, which is, again, not going to be a bad move in a lot of London systems, but in this particular position was not the best.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop b7, knight bd2. Again, this is a snapshot of the London. Your pieces have been developed where they should go. The biggest issue is that, again, you missed bishop g6. And again, what this position really needs is for you to get aggressive here because he's created such a bad situation for his king. He plays queen d7. He's clearly creating a plan to do this. This was your last chance to give this check and take away his right to castle. Unfortunately, you missed that. You played bishop b5. But now it looks like from here, you started to kind of realize what to do. You played queen e2, which I assume was kind of maybe to play bishop a6. Was that your plan?
Partly that, and partly to not have my bishop just be open in case he decides to push his pawn or do something there.
Okay. And this is also a very common London move, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Levy talked to you about that. I mean, honestly, if you were taking a snapshot of the London structure, this position really would have almost totally completed it. This is a very ideal setup for white in the London, and we can talk about that later, but it makes sense to try to put the queen on e2 to support your bishop in a lot of ways. Again, I think you already gave yourself your own coaching here. You said earlier he played bad with his pawns. Early recognition of that means you probably should have played for c4. I think that everything you've done here is fine, but I'm not going to beat a dead horse and continue to... Am I allowed to say that? Sorry, that's just a metaphor. Anyway, I'm not going to go over a point over and over again when we've already got it figured out. And really now he blundered. He played e5, not recognizing that his knight is pinned. And you just took it. And now you
went for it.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, at that point he felt like, that was a mistake. The moment we were playing on Discord, so the moment I took, he was regretting it.
Yeah, nice. So you're saying he was dropping explicitives? Is that what you're saying? Off air?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, knight e5, queen e8, queen g4 check. Okay. Not bad. You're trying to just pick up another pawn. Sounds good. Sometimes instinctively I get nervous anytime we're going against the direction of this, because you could still argue that the best overarching thing to do here, when your opponent's king has committed to one side of the board, we want to open up lines toward that side of the board. So even though this is a second pawn, I would actually argue that c4 is probably still the best move. Just everything you can do to open up the rook, because just look at this relationship here, right?
Yeah.
That's checkmate coming. bishop and rook together on c7. And no matter what he does here, I mean, if you get yourself in a position to open up the c file, the game is going to quickly unwind for him, right? And so, yes, this worked out with queen g4. You took the pawn, but I want to point that out because here it partly got better because of his next blunder, bishop d6, which blundered the rook, right, at the end of that trade. If he plays, for example, if he plays like bishop h6, develops and attacks your queen, even bishop e7, and then knight f6, another tempo, and then he gets the rook out. Look what just happened. We went out of our way to win a pawn, and in turn, he gained one. Sorry, if he goes for this, like maybe one, maybe two, maybe three tempi, kind of the initiative starts backfiring, right? And objectively, don't get me wrong, you're still in a good spot here. But one of the big picture things is that when we have kings on opposite sides of the board, very often activity and threats should be higher valued than the smallest amount of material, just because of what that means we can do, right? When you have the ability to bring the house, it's going to be worth more than a pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked out here again, mainly because after bishop d6, you took and won the rook. But if I was to say the overarching lessons from this game all center around move 9, needing c4, and move 15, needing c4, as a recognition that you said yourself, your opponent's king can't be in a safe area. Let's recognize that as early as possible and create opportunities to punish him. So, man, that was fast. Let's do another one.
I see it now how, it also... I didn't think about how it would open up the c-file for the rook as well to join the bishop. Because I wanted to have the bishop on the long diagonal there, but bringing something else there, like you said, can seal the deal then.
Well, and let's not underestimate how critical this is, because if for Pogchamps, because if you start getting the London systems that Levy talked about, the ones that don't involve kind of the bad approach that Stormer took here, like this is like a London you talked about. You get the plans he probably advised, like bringing knights in and bringing pieces out. If you get really good at this type of London, people might start like running away from that London and try to castle long. So your recognition that if that happens, probably c4 now, just you put that in your pocket, right? You're not going to forget, is really the difference in the approach, right? Opening up the queen side for the rook, opening up ideas for the queen to be more aggressive rather than the traditional London route. So yes, it's an individual game here, and specifically you had c4 and even that bishop g6 check, but it's a bigger thing than that, I think, if you continue to get good Londons. So that's good.
Yeah.
Let me bring up another game against Stormstormer. I like this guy, Stormer. Maybe he wants to play a Pogchamps.
He's actually a great guy too, and he's one of the coaches that I brought to my training camp that I run for Dota people.
Oh yeah.
So I actually know him very well. He's probably
Is he watching right now?
He might be. I think he had to go. I think he's probably studying or something. He's
got it.
A German student.
Like, is he studying Dota? Is that a thing?
Oh no. Well, if you're in a team, you do that a little bit, but mostly you play. It's mostly just. It's so much muscle memory and getting execution down in Dota that it's a little bit less than chess knowledge and more getting, really just lizard brain reactions, like doing the right thing at the right time.
And Dota is super, like, it matters what your APM is, right? What is your actions per minute? What are you?
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, if I play a hero that matters a lot, like if I was to play Invoker, the hero probably highest, then I would probably have 400. But if I play... In general, you don't need it. And yeah, Stormstormer is in the chat. He showed himself. He's watching his bad plays.
Okay, he is here.
But no, generally, I think Dota and chess has a lot of common themes. It's a very strategic game. And you can play... I mean, I'm 31, right? I'm getting up there in terms of playing competitive video games. But you can still play even if you have slower reaction. Just anticipate stuff and be strategic.
It's like any other sport. Your experience pays off, right?
Sure.
The pattern and the right approach, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so that's the game you beat, Stormer. So happy for him. I just said hey to him in your chat.
Yeah.
Now we'll look at one that he beat you. So let's look at one. So you guys rotated. Looks like you played a lot of 10-minute and 5-minute games here.
Yeah, we played 5 minutes. I don't I'm not comfortable playing 5 minutes without increment. I'm way too
Okay.
slow for that.
Okay.
So I increased the timer just to be closer to what Pogchamps is going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
So that's
yeah,
good. Although
he's been playing fast.
remember that if you get to a tiebreaker in a match, you will have to play a blitz game to move on.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's like the early meta stuff, right? If you end up deciding you're faster than someone, or what I would say is this week as you prepare, play most of your time controls in the Pog time control. There's a comfort level there that'll really be important for the instincts and how you manage the clock, right? Knowing when to slow down. But also, don't underestimate playing some blitz. In fact, this is a quick tip I was given by one of my coaches. One of the best things to do at the end of a session where you've been training, like if I was in real chess training, when you're tired, is to solve. Like people often think of solving puzzles and playing blitz in the beginning of things when they're fresh to kind of wake up and get themselves sharp and ready for a match. One of the most useful things to do is like if you're like, all right, I got a half an hour left, I'm actually going to go faster now and play faster time controls and push myself to stay up on the clock. Like my main goal in these games is even if I lose, I'm not going to lose on time, like no matter what. And when
Yeah.
and this was a really good tip. Obviously, Gregory Kaidanov gave it to me. He also said solving puzzles when you're exhausted replicates like the end of like a long tournament and challenge your critical thinking instead of doing it when you're fresh and it seems easy. And
Oh,
so,
yeah, I've been doing that a lot.
so
I've been
that's
doing.
okay. That's good, and keep doing that. I'm giving you a little bit of like this is kind of a little more advanced like chess training stuff, but I'm still gonna say that as your coach, I would hate if you got in a tiebreaker and you did nothing to challenge yourself in the faster time controls and you just basically felt like a fish out of water, right? You got totally blitzed. So push yourself a little bit. Like, don't be afraid at the end of a day to be like, all right, I got a half an hour. Instead of 1-10-5 game that I'm not gonna have time to analyze, I'll play a 5 minute game and really take it seriously, try to win on time, and then even like look at it and treat myself harshly about mistakes I made. Like treat blitz like it matters because in the end, blitz is an important challenge for our brain. It's everything we're trying to do, just faster, right? And so if we can do it, we should do it.
Yeah, that
Does that make
sounds
sense?
good.
Okay.
Yeah, one second. My mouse actually needs
battery?
to change batteries. Yeah.
LOL. I've run into that mid broadcast, like with like lots of people watching a huge chess broadcast, and I was
Oh,
frozen.
really?
And like
I have a
I did
battery.
this like on camera. I was smiling and I was reaching into my. We keep a battery pack of like chargeable batteries, and I was changing
Yeah.
the battery. I looked a little bit awkward if you know what I'm doing underneath,
Sure.
and it looked a little awkward, but I got it up and everything was good. So there you go.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's awkward. I have this mouse. It can have two batteries in, but it gets a little bit too heavy then, and then
Okay.
my wrist hurts. So, yeah. There we go. Whoops. Now my entire setting. Okay. Good.
All right, cool. So we're gonna look at this. Wait, I gotta invite you to it. I'm sorry. Un momento.
But yeah, what you said about doing tired puzzles, that's pretty much been my go-to when I've done like a 12-hour stream or something. I lay on the couch and I do puzzles, and I'm like beat. I'm mentally drained from like streaming 12 hours.
Right.
And then I just do a lot of puzzles. And I don't know, it feels like a good thing to do. I should push myself to solve the puzzles faster though, overall.
Yeah, and it's it's hard because like a traditional chess thinking and coaching has always like applied itself to like take as much time as it takes to find the best move. And I think that there's a process in that is like sort of almost like chess morality. Like the great chess like champions would be, there's the famous phrase, if you find a good move, look for a better one, right? And there's a part of that where chess is a game of like truth and black and white, where like you shouldn't settle on something that you think is like not the best. But the reality is that the game has evolved, and even at the highest levels of chess, time is a huge part of it. Rapid is the most popular time control now. Online, it's blitz and bullet, right? But even in over-the-board chess, before things happened with the pandemic, those who followed the Grand Chess Tour, I mean, you followed the World Championship. How was it decided?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't decided in classical. It was decided in rapid, right? And you followed that, right? And Fabiano got his ass kicked when they hit rapid, right? That's what happened. And there's a part of the reality which is your time management of your critical thinking process is just as important as the critical thinking process. And so we don't need to go on a long tangent there, but I would just say that a lot of times players shouldn't like dismiss the importance of challenging their critical thinking to speed up a little bit, because a lot of times it's there. It's just like it's retraining your habit. That's all. So all right, let's take a look at this 5-minute game you lost to Stormer. Because the reason I want to is because it was another London. It was the same opening, so this is going to allow us to build on the other game. I know that in theory. Wait, let me look in. I've got on my screen. I've got your whole history for all my viewers, and let me see. I think you're okay. So the 5-minute game was right before you won. Mm-hmm. So you lost this one, and then you switched to the 10-minute and won.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotta switch it up.
Okay, that's okay. So I just wanted to see that. So now we're gonna see. And I'll just throw the. I think that if I give people the link in my chat, people can click on it and come watch live on chess.com. I'm pretty sure you can do that. All right. So bishop b5. So he played the same thing, but in the next game that you won, the previous one, after h6, you just played bishop d3. You stuck with your London guns. And this first one here, this one you played bishop b5.
Yeah.
So that's good.
The moment I placed it, though, I felt like this was not what I wanted to do, but pins always looks tempting.
But that's good. It means
would you do this?
You adjusted. What?
So yeah, I actually end up putting back my bishop next, I think.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, he plays here and then you go back. So that's funny because even though I would say that bishop b5 is not what you want in terms of the London that Levy taught you. Obviously, you played the correct bishop d3 in the next game and you won. So I'm not going back on anything to say that you should have played bishop d3. You should have. But once the bishop is here, it's probably a greater sin to try to adjust and go back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It just costs time.
The best move, again, believe it or not, okay, knight f3 is a very natural move that would have threatened to go to e5 because the knight is pinned, by the way. That would have been a really good move. But regardless of knight f3, I want to point out, funnily enough, probably the best positional move again, now that you've already committed to this side of the board. Take a guess about what move I think is the best.
Is it c4 coming in?
Yep, it is. It is. In fact, not even close. It's actually the best move by a lot, I think, because forget about the fact that knight f3 has a threat. From a positional reasoning, this also has a threat. And if they take, you have d5, and you're winning on the spot. So playing c4 and then continuing to bring pieces to this side of the board. And by the way, the rook is coming to c1.
Yeah, same thing again with a c-file.
Now that you've gotten this twice, I'm going to back up and show why c4 has come around twice as the right breakthrough. Whenever we're in a queen's pawn game, typically it's very important for black to maintain the ability to play c6 to support the center. And the reason is that in a king's pawn game, while the king's gambit is an opening, at this point at the high levels it's considered a dubious one for two reasons. One, you literally are just opening up and making your king naked on the dark squares. Tactically, you just create problems for yourself. But also something very important that people forget. The king is not the queen. The king does not support his own center. So by definition, the best lines in the king's gambit often involve, and in fact, even on this move, instead of taking, a very common best move is just d5. Black just strikes at the center and points out that you're just going to destroy the center here because the king doesn't protect his own pawn chain, right? So I know this is bigger chess philosophy. It's very important to understand. The reason the queen's pawn game typically has an idea where black is protecting the center, not blocking the pawns, is because at some point in the queen's pawn game, white is often going to play c4, whether even in a London move order or not. And when c4 comes in, black needs the ability to protect the center. So the reason this has actually come around twice now in the game you lost and won is because he's making a slightly dubious move. And I know that Stormer is watching in the chat. So the advice for him would be he should be playing this knight out and keeping it flexible. In fact, for you, Stormer, in the London, you can either play c6, but because they haven't played c4, if you get all these moves in and they still haven't played c4, he can actually consider doing a queen's gambit himself and making you go c3 and like this. This would be the position he wants. The knight is now behind the pawn where they both double up on the center rather than the position he was getting, which is a dysfunctional one with the knight in front of the pawn where it doesn't defend the center. So that's why c4 keeps coming back around.
Yeah, I feel this is something that I've heard before now that I should look out for when the knights are blocking their pawns because it limits what they can do to react.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other way to say it too is The knights actually are the few pieces that thrive behind pawns. So you want them behind pawns because the knights, unlike other pieces, are improved when they're blockaded, so to speak. Because the knight and the pawn here actually double attack, right? Whereas when the pawn is there, they don't. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at that. There's an old Russian schoolboy kind of proverb, which is you never put your knight in front of a B pawn. Now this is a C pawn, but it's actually a common thing where, and Robert and I talk about this a lot, and like, you know, maybe not the World Championship, I don't know if you watch any of the other commentaries since then, but we talk about this a lot when people break that principle or not, when you start blocking your own potential in the position when the minors are being put in front of the pawns, you prevent your opportunity for space. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, you got this line. Now that you were here, you were potentially still much better if you play a move like C4. And again, Knight F3 also threatens this move, which is really irritating. I don't even know. I wanted to focus on C4 because that's really the pattern lesson that I know you can apply to future games, and that's my job as a coach, is not just to, you know, slap your wrist and say this was a bad move, this is a better one. Here's something you can do in future games in this structure. But that said, just developing the knight, threatening 95, is actually a serious problem for him here. What's he going to do, play F6? I mean, he might have to, but that's just, like, super ugly. Right now, look at, now he's got Swiss cheese everywhere. There's holes all over the place.
Yeah, now the knight could
Yeah.
even, like, take different steps.
Yeah, you could even try to go after light squares, but again, if you just play C4, you're in, like, a great position. Like, you're still just in a really good spot.
Yeah, I've definitely been thinking about it a lot, that getting the knight supported by either two pawns or by a bishop and a pawn like that is something that feels really annoying to deal with.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's normal that you tried to back up because you're in a new spot right now. Your coach gave you a weapon. You're trying to use it, the London. So it's a judgment-free zone here. I'm not judging what you're doing, right? But it's definitely...
You can judge.
I'm judging. It's a judgment-free zone, which means in some ways we're safe to judge. So
exactly, it's free to judge. Yeah,
Right.
definitely free to judge.
So yeah, so it's a greater sin for you to try to back up here than it was for you to just stay full speed.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. I understand that.
So now he goes for the same idea, which is good that it backfired in the next game. So you taught him a lesson. Because this is really just overextending. And again, you kept going for C3, but if you just immediately recognize that C4 is the move and you start playing on this side of the board, the reason this is tough for him is because his other option is to take it and you'll take back, and now you have the Queen's Gambit Dream, which is the two center pawns versus one. Eventually you're going to have a lot of great space here. The bishop is fantastic. So he doesn't really have any good options. He has to defend the center and you keep attacking. He develops and you keep bringing pieces over. And at some point, the queen side opens up naturally, and white is in just... I mean, we're talking dance parties on C7.
And
it's a serious problem.
His king is opposite the rook as well, which is never fun. Yeah.
So C4 really, it's funny, and I didn't, we're just getting to know each other here, and I grabbed the games because you said you were playing a Dota friend, but this has actually been very useful, because this is like a super applicable... It's not very often you get to go over games this early in like a coaching-student relationship, where there's like immediate takeaways. Like you have to just start recognizing in an opening you are going to get again, so this will be applicable, that when this happens, C4 is a no-brainer. And it changes the London approach, but you're going to blow open the queen side and just punish them positionally.
Yeah, no, this is really useful. I mean, right now I'm trying to get the repetition in, but it's great to have, I wouldn't have seen these things, so this helps me recognize... because this was a pattern, right? Happened 2 times in a row here.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. If you want to look at more games, then Matthew said that the game before the one we watched was actually really even until the end.
Wait, so is your game against him?
Yeah, against Matthew.
Okay, cool. The one that was just black, but it was very even. Okay, cool. And yeah, I saw Matthew FF was in your chat and my chat, so shout out to Matthew.
Yeah.
Hanging out. Let's do it, right?
Yeah, let's look.
Okay.
Oh, you got gifted a sub. You're a sub now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Odd Blue.
Sorry, I'm not following your chat. There we go. Thank you there. What emotes do I get to use? Let me see what the Waga emotes
The mango.
are.
The mango is the first one you have to use.
The mango?
So it's it's just my face on an item in Dota, basically, the enchanted mango.
Oh, there it is. Wagamama.
Yeah.
That is adorable.
Welcome. Yeah, right?
Nice.
Someone made that.
Cool. All right. So so Matthew actually, and he said he's 1700 on Lead Chess and obviously gaining rating on chess.com. I think he's probably a little bit better than 1200 just looking at the fact that he immediately plays c5. This is a very experienced way to handle the London.
Oh, am I not on the board yet?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't invite you. My bad.
Oh, oops.
I clicked on it and didn't invite you. LOL. Turning this into a lesson for Matthew. Boom. So now you're here.
Yeah.
Can you see the game?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Yeah, so c5 is an experienced way to handle it, and let me describe why. So all the things I said in the last game about the knight being in front of the c pawn being bad for black, right? Mm-hmm. Because you not only do not have the ability to protect the center with c6 maybe, but you also can't play the aggressive approach with c5 that I suggested as an option for Stormer.
Yep.
But in a London, very often because they know you want to get this structure, they can take the aggressive approach and say, then I'll be the one with the Queen's Gambit. Normally, in a normal traditional Queen's Gambit, it goes like this, where white is challenging the center, and instead of taking and giving white the big center to win the pawn, where white's better, black defends it and is on the passive approach with a c6 move, which is a Slav. I was just teaching Finton, or a Queen's Gambit. Either way, black is kind of on the defensive. The one thing about the London is because it's not challenging the center, if black wants to, he can play c5. But it's a risky approach if you're ready to be aggressive against it. I would actually advise Matthew that, well, a couple things. By the way, did Levy teach you the bishop f4 move order first on purpose, or did he actually say knight f3 and then bishop f4, just out of curiosity?
I think I can't actually quote him with certainty. We went over a lot of things and I don't have perfect recollection.
Okay.
So it might have been knight first.
The reason I ask is because knight f3 is a harder move for black to justify c5 against. Because in some ways, you're actually more prepared to take it here. And kind of call their bluff a little bit. There's some tricky lines. I guess I don't want to get too advanced. But the main point is, like, if you take, they can't win the pawn back right away without d5 hanging. And in some cases, if they try to do the e6 move to open up the bishop, there's a very common Queen's Gambit strike back that normally black is doing where you have this move e4. And if they take, you get like this with knight g5, and actually, so then they try to defend the pawn.
Oh,
and you win the pawn back, and you hold on to this guy. And what? So, the point is this: knight f3 is probably the more principled move order. It's also a little bit less to tip your hand, and the reason is that, in theory, if you play knight f3, they don't actually know yet for sure that you're playing the London. In theory, if you play this, you could actually still play c4, and you're in a Queen's Gambit. So a little bit of deception can go a long way, and I would actually advise you to like start playing this move order first. Yeah. You haven't done anything to stop the London, but you also haven't told your opponent that that's what you're doing yet. Now, with all that said, here's what ends up happening. The other thing is that because Matthew plays c5 right away, what he's doing is he's actually, in some ways, preparing to be ultra-aggressive to expose the London, because one of the things about these really sharp lines is the bishop leaves the queenside dark squares behind, and sometimes there's tactics there. Nothing right away, but in some mainline Londons, like this is actually a move, like right here. And you have to kind of know what you're doing here. It can get super crazy. You can play like knight c3 and sack the pawn and try to trap the queen. Anyway, it's bananas. Let's not go into that. The main point is this. c5, whether Matthew had the intentions of going for very sharp lines or not, is exactly the kind of anti-London move black should look for, whether it's early or later, as I was advising Stormer. So that just shows me he kind of knows what he's doing. So now you played c3. He gets the knight out, and then he plays bishop f5. So he's trying to exert he's in a good spot. Not to say you're in a bad spot, but this is actually a pretty equal game now. Bishop d3, we get the trade. Normal stuff. Okay. What was your thought when you faced the move c4? Like, give me your instincts when he played c4 against you. Take me into Wagamama's mind here. Not the mango mind, but normal mind.
Well, my initial thought is that... My first thought is just that it was dumb to play up the bishop, because now I retake and he gets to push me back again. But where else were you gonna put the bishop? Because his bishop is outside the pawn chain. This isn't like a. My thoughts after this was that maybe I move my knight first, but there's not too many exciting
you could,
squares
but then he'll go here, and now where do we develop this guy? Either way, you're settling on a square like this, right? Because you can't go here.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I think it's not an ideal London anymore because he got this opportunity to stop you from the favorite square you want. The best idea you might have, actually, in this sort of move order is maybe to try to expose him for leaving the light squares behind. If he makes a bad move like b6, you could be winning almost right away. Attacking the light squares in big trouble. Things like this. And here you come. So, I didn't slow down to do that because I felt like I was over-talking little stuff, but I want to say that in general, usually the risk of someone developing their light square bishop in a queen's pawn game where your queen has access is tactics that involve the light squares on the queen side, so that's one thing to look for. But either way, like, this is not the end of the world. Like, you trade here, yes, you've lost the light square bishop, but you're ahead in development, you have a very solid pawn structure. You're not going to checkmate him on the light squares anymore, but this is a good position for white. This is totally solid. Okay?
Yeah.
So when he plays this, the reason I asked that is because I thought that probably you thought what Matthew thought, which is that you probably both thought that c4 was good. That was a lot of thinking there. c4 is not good by black.
Okay.
And part of the reason is that it actually can give you, now that your center is protected, and you have a very, very solid base pawn chain here without any pressure, now you have the opportunity to open up the center and gain space. So, for example, even if you had played a good move like knight f6, you play knight bd2, and very soon you're going to punch open e4. And what happens in this structure is either black lets you go all the way, and you really have a huge space advantage with a big pawn chain, where you can attack on the king side still. Like, you could play h4 and knight g5. You actually still have a... Whenever you have a pawn chain like this, you have good attacking chances, because a pawn on e5 means no knight on f6, which means the light square diagonal has some tactics to it, has some juice to it. So he either does that, or he takes it and lets you take, and what he's done is actually broken his pawn chain. This is a very common thing that less experienced players do, where they overvalue the tempo, right? They overvalue the quick space when it actually gives white more freedom. Black should have just been developing. And what happens now is if he just develops naturally, you're kind of in a tough spot because you're never safe to open up the position. If you play e4, he's going to take everything, and in the end, you're going to be left with an isolated pawn here, a weakness, because of the pawn pressure that he kept here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So it's very common that people value tempi over tension. It's a thing I would say to kids. Don't value tempi over tension all the time. Sometimes maintaining the tension is good because if he ever takes, you're just going to take right back. If he ever takes, you take right back and you're good. You've got a big center. So don't be in a rush, right? And your tension here prevents white from opening the center because then he's going to have tactical problems. So c4 is actually, and the reason I'm showing you this again is not a long-winded way to criticize Matthew, believe it or not, or you. It's actually... just because this is a common thing that's going to happen again. People often relieve the tension in the center when they shouldn't. And if you remember this and you're like, okay, this is not the end of the world. Danny told me. I just back up and guess what's coming next? E4. And if you remember that idea of the fact that E4 is coming, you're going to be in good shape. Because...
yeah, I didn't even consider the fact that I could just push the pawn and break the chain in the center, sort of.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even think about that.
By the way, is that an eye tracker on your stream?
I do have an eye tracker, yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I have an eye tracker here, a Toby eye tracker.
Yeah, it's exactly the same one. I've met the people who founded that company.
Me too. They actually gave me the free models. I met them at TwitchCon.
Oh, no shit. That's
I met him
cool.
at TwitchCon where I got this thing. I told you we could be best friends.
Yeah, no, I went to
Kidding.
Vegas with him. I
No,
went to Vegas
I
to the CS event with him.
I know the CEO and founder, and they sent us some, and then I think we bought a couple. So last year at the Pro Chess League Live Finals in San Francisco, we actually used the eye tracker, and Fabiano
Oh,
Caruana had it. I
you
don't know
did
if
it for
watched.
the.
Do you remember
God damn
that?
it! I've said that we should do this in Dota for so long, but no one is doing it. You guys did it.
Yeah, we did it. We had the eye tracker, and you could see where he was thinking, and we had all plans to do it again in the live final, but we don't. Chess.com doesn't host live events that often, right?
Yeah.
It's online, and everyone's at home.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about sending everybody Toby eye trackers, but I haven't budgeted. I mean, and again, like right now, we're in our own world with online events because of everything that the world is going through. But I
mean,
think it's
that's
pretty cool technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh yeah, it's super cool. That's amazing that you actually used it. I think it's so valuable because you can see, where the attention is of a player. So
Yeah.
I would love to see the same thing in Dota. And actually, we got sponsored for the training camp by Tobii Eye Tracking. So
Really?
they gave every student we had eye trackers on them. And I could see what they're looking at. I know if they're not paying attention. So
That is
it was,
awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
super cool tech.
You're like, hey, like I'm talking about this, and your eyes aren't even on the screen right now.
It was super fun. When I went to, this is a short side story here, but yeah, when I went to their office in Stockholm and met with them,
Yeah.
they wanted to have me play and just get data from like an actual like pro player and how we look at the game and compare it to an amateur player, just Dota, how we take in information and then compare the stats. And I looked at it and it was hilarious to me to see there's certain like bits of information available, right? Like
Right.
whenever you play any RTS game, you have a minimap, right?
Right.
And I check that basically once every 3 seconds for the entirety of 2 hours of gameplay. So every 3 seconds on average, I check it. And
Wow.
when I looked at the amateur guy playing, it was like there was a window of like 4 minutes of him not looking. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh my god, that's awesome. That's like
So-
super insightful stuff.
Right? Yeah, it's
wow.
very useful.
Yeah, no, I mean, the eye tracker stuff will be stuff we use more and more, and anybody who's watching it at my channel should go give Waga a follow right now, and that's pretty cool stuff. And you got to keep using the eye tracker with all the chess practice streams you're going to do this week. I want people to
Yep.
see you using the eye tracker. It's awesome, like so we can see what
Yep.
you're thinking about. But so, like I said, E4 is a very common structural kind of counter shot here, and it's a move that Matthew FF, who's in the chats, can learn from too. It's overrated. And part of the reason, again, Matthew, is like if you did this for more than just gaining the tempo because you wanted the space, that's good. That is like the next level idea, is that you did it not just for the tempo but for the attack. But even that is still like not correct here, because that plan is much slower than white busting the center and really getting like valuable gains there, right? E4, E5 is huge for white structure. The amount of time it would take for black to actually get a meaningful sort of bump to the base of this pawn chain that holds it together is too many moves. And
Yeah, it takes
and
so many steps to go down there.
Yeah, so that's a good lesson there. All right, so F6. And so that was also just not a good move, F6. He should have played knight F6, and you definitely could have immediately struck with E4. This would have been fantastic for you. Just look, I mean, if this opens up, I mean, this is like exactly what you want in the light squares. And also
yeah.
note that C4 is suddenly weak. If you get rid of D5 in the middle of the pawn chain, C4 feels like a pawn that's gone too far rather than an advantage, right? You're literally developing naturally and attacking it, right? So this is going to be a very common structural lesson for you in the London to get this move E4. So you castle, H5, and again, so here, this is a good example where you start, and it's okay because, by the way, again, you've missed this G6 check a few times, so put your eye tracker on G6 for me, just so I see that you're looking. I mean, you missed it with the bishop, and now you got to take that check, man. You're just like ruining their right to castle, and then no matter what you do next is good, whether it's E4 or just bring the queen home, right? And knight h4 is not a bad move in that regard either. You're recognizing the potential of g6, but again, the main goal here is try to develop plans that the best move could be coming from your opponent, yet it's still good for you. It's still improving your position. And the reason, it's a very important psychological like step chess players make, where you stop playing for small versions of if chess or tactical chess. And I'm not saying you don't take advantage of a blunder that falls in your lap. Like, someone blunders a piece, you take the piece, right? If someone blunders a check, take it, right? Play queen g6 check here. But overall, you want your critical thinking to be about plans that the best move could be coming from your opponent, and it doesn't stop your plan. So e4 is a positional plan. What it does is it liberates and creates new opportunities for your pieces, whether he takes it, whether he ignores it, you're going to get this liberation regardless. And so you see the difference in a plan that is like, it's about improving all of your pieces, and it doesn't matter how he deals with it, you're improving your position. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so those are the plans you want to look for. And if you play those things and your opponent blunders along the way, so be it. You take it, right? But that's kind of what you want your mindset to be. And I worry about this move because it's moving a knight to the edge of the board. If he played knight e7 to defend it and guarded g6, he would have been in a better spot. But he goes all in with g5. Wow. And again, you could have played this queen g6 check. You played knight g6, looks like. Rook h6. And then bishop g3. I wonder why he came this far and then didn't go all the way and trap your bishop. Definitely what he should have done there. Just played h4. So not sure why he didn't just play h4 here, but he played f5 to try to trap your knight. Now, probably you should have taken here. Go ahead. What are you saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I guess he was just cutting off the queen, but you're right. If I take his bishop, then again, he can't castle, right?
Right. So he kind of missed his opportunity. His opportunity to fully, trap the bishop was h4. He played f5 thinking he had more time to do it, and you kind of gave it back to him. But if you had taken with tempo, now you have time to save your bishop with a number of moves. I mean, you could even play like f4 here. Interesting. To kind of start challenging his dark squares and get your bishop some safety. All right. Overall, the biggest lesson in this game that's already... I want to just reiterate that before we move on, because the longer we go here, the more specific it's going to get to a position that you may never get again, which can still offer different types of insights. But as far as the kind of position you're going to get again, let's really take to heart this e4 challenge of this kind of pawn chain, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that'll be something you're going to get again. All right, so sure. Knight e5 was played. Now he gets your bishop, unfortunately. Although, wait, you got out. He panicked on queen a4. He should have just taken first. Because if you take here, I mean, he takes with check. He can take back, and it's really, I mean, yes, you get a check, but he wins a piece, right? It's not that big of a deal. But you found a creative way out, right? He didn't take advantage of it, so you saved your bishop. Way to go. Nice. Bishop d6, f4. Wow, we're back in, this is a game. E takes, nice, takes. You're better again. When I say you're better here, why do you think I say that? Although, actually, now that I say that, he found the very good move. This is absolutely the best move that is the one move that maybe changes that you're better at. Maybe you're not better.
Yeah, it's what ended up being bad. I guess why would you say better is his king being so open in middle, I guess.
Yeah, and you have a little more space. So I was saying those things, but the truth is queen g5 is a fantastic move. Not just because it aims at the king, but it actually stops you from developing the knight.
It did. It was very annoying.
Yeah, that was a very good move by him. And so you played rook f2 to be able to do this. He should have taken advantage of his chance. Queen c1. Owie. He didn't see that. It's winning on the spot, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's rough.
And so queen g5 was a fantastic move because probably your best move now is queen back to c2. To guard g2 and prepare knight d2, but that's a hard move.
I was considering it. Yeah, I was considering it, but it's also like I'm unpinning his knight on my own to bring my queen back. But later on, I wanted to have played that move because my queen is going to be stuck over there forever, and I feel like she felt pretty away from home at the late game here.
Yeah, well, this is a good one though. I mean, sorry, 1 second. Getting pinged a little bit by people in my company. 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
So yeah, this was a very good move. You did the best you could to try to deal with that, defend everything, but it could have had really bad tactical consequences that he didn't see.
Yeah, I see that now.
So he didn't see it either. So you got developed. So now we're back to equality. Now we're okay. And now we're doing okay again. This is a very equal position. So let's see where the critical moment was. 97, queen b4. All right, this is going to be awesome. So, challenge time. This is all of the training I've been giving you, my young Padawan. Right? This is it. We talked about developing plans that are positional in nature, not just if threats and hope tactics. Plans that create more opportunities, and especially given the type of moves those have centered around pawn breaks and things, I want to challenge you to see if you can find what the best move was here.
Could it be breaking with b3?
You're so good. You're so good. By far the best move. Look at this. And if he takes it, you know what even the next counter shot might be? You might even forget this pawn and play this move. This is what an example I would say of small material isn't as important as the fact that you might have just opened up lines to checkmate his king. If something like this... Oops, not like that. If something like this happened, you would even take here. Like, I'm not even in a rush. I'm going to build up on this tension, and we are about to knock down the door with gusto. I actually think if you find b3 here, you go on to win this game. And yes, if he takes it, you could also just take back, and then you'll get c4. But I really wanted to drive home the point I said earlier, that in positions with kings on opposite sides of the board, the small amounts of material is often not as important as the opportunities you create. And if he takes it, you're just busting him up. Take him with check, you'll get the other pawn back, the rooks are going to swing, and you're going to be in an awesome spot.
Yeah.
And so the difference between a plan like that versus queen b4 is night and day, right? Because this is like a one-move threat to get what? To get what? A one-move check, and then what? Like a one-move, right? You get what I'm saying?
Nothing.
You're not bringing in... You're not bringing the party. You're not bringing in the reinforcements that's going to change the game, which is about those positional breakthroughs, create more opportunities for your pieces.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying here makes sense, because if you look at my pawn chain or my pawn structure in general, there's no way my rooks are going to threaten him until something happens.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Man, we have made a lot of progress today. This is awesome. This is awesome.
This is nice.
B3 is a big-time move. And if you're gonna be playing the London, what's funny is it's good that we're going over all this stuff, because we've talked about the lessons of C4 being needed in a couple of games, whatever. But in general, if you're gonna be playing the London, even forgetting the move he played C4, it's a very solid pawn structure. It creates the term we've called the hat, I guess, since everyone started naming things weirdly since XQC started shooting chess.
Exactly.
So it creates the hat, which is true. And in that structure, in the hat structure, you are always going to have to be considering new pawn breaks, right? Just because you create that solid structure doesn't mean that's what it is forever, right? And that's part of the advantage of it being solid, is that it's flexible and that it will have these options later on to play e4 or to play c4. So
I guess that's the power, that the d pawn is protected no matter which of them push up, right?
Right,
so,
exactly. The d pawn is protected whether you move e or c. The other guy still defends. So, but it's funny because even beyond that, we're getting into games where other pawn breaks are kind of the relevant idea, and I think that's just super instructive, because you're gonna have these types of things on your brain, or they should be on your brain, in a lot of future games. And that'll help you. So
I'm making a mental note of that one, because both my rooks felt like they're just, on defensive duty, and they're not even doing that good of a job at it, but they could be attacking.
Right. Great point. And what's funny is if you did this and opened it up, your rooks could actually still be defending and attacking, right? They're actually still on the second rank, so very useful stuff. All right. Cool stuff. So you get the checks, and again, I wasn't trying to pick on you, but it is kind of like the queen is on like a solo Batman adventure here, right? And it's just not going to work out. And here you went and got a pawn, which is cool, but it actually allowed this tactic where he popped back and got the knight out. Suddenly the position is super, super messy. I actually think you're probably okay here if you find the best move.
Apparently I looked at this in the engine. Apparently it would be even worse if he played knight to g2.
That would have ended the game.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking. Yeah, obviously. Duh. Yeah.
So it was allowing the knight to come in is very painful.
No, you're right. And so that's more proof that the queen was kind of on on a bad one-man adventure, one-woman adventure, and it could have just been crushed like this.
Yeah.
After this move, you did have a chance if you defend the rook.
Yeah, I should have done the right rook move.
Yeah. Now you're actually okay, right? Because you've got a couple pawns and a knight for the rook. One of them is actually very well protected. This would have been a very tricky game from here on out. But after king f1, he took, and now you're busted because when you take queen g2.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that the moment I stepped to the side. I'm like, I should have moved the rook instead.
Yep. Okay, cool. I mean, this lesson is legendary. Someone just said in my chat. This is honestly, I feel like this lesson is going super well. And as someone like we just started it, like your games have been really insightful. This is gonna give you some immediate impact.
Yeah, I think so. I'm very excited. Very excited to see what can happen in the upcoming week here of playing.
Cool.
I feel like I'm learning stuff.
Well, we spent a lot of time on your white. I feel like you're pretty empowered with the thank you there, Matthew, for the stuff. I feel like you're pretty empowered with the London thing there. We've talked a lot about, I feel like I'm trusting if you get a traditional kind of London and they stop rushing these crazy pawns against you, you'll be okay. But now you've seen pretty consistently overall, if they rush these crazy pawns, a lot of times this c4 move, or later on has been the idea that you could have gone for. The question I have is, do you want to look at some things you're doing as black? What are you doing as black right now?
So London, I actually remember sort of well for white, right? But I have just been trying to get a grip on the Caro-Kann, but I don't remember it quite clearly enough. So yeah, I'm just experimenting with Caro-Kann right now.
Okay, well, why don't you? Let's see. I'm gonna open up a new analysis board. Actually, do you remember the tab open called Lesson with Waga? Grab that one.
Let's see.
You've got all those games open. If you come back to Lesson with Waga. Oh, sorry, not the tab. I meant in live chess. My bad.
Oh.
On the right side, there's a bunch of tabs for all the boards we have open.
Oh, did I? Oh, right. Lesson with Waga. Yeah.
On the right side, there's a Lesson with Waga tab. Yeah.
On it now.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse it. So why don't you play black? Why don't you play black and I'll play white? And I'll share.
Okay.
Can you move the pieces as black?
Yeah. I just flipped the board.
There you go. Cool.
Get confused.
I'm just gonna share the link with those watching where we're actually analyzing it live. If they want to come look. So play. Yeah, go ahead and play your Caro-Kann, and we'll test it out a little bit of sparring here to help you out.
So I guess I just go with a d5.
Yeah. So this is your first couple of moves, pretty much no matter what.
Yeah.
And now there's several options. There's three main ones white can play. They can push e5. They can take.
Or do nothing.
And then they can like develop and defend.
Yeah.
So did you look at those with Levy? Where'd you guys get to?
Yeah, we looked at them. But I just need to rewatch that session a little bit because I didn't really remember everything fully.
Okay. Yeah, and I think
we looked at it, but
it's best for us to. I'm not gonna try to grill you, and I was just kind of curious. I think at this point that's normal, so don't judge yourself that you're not gonna remember it. Try to again continue to focus on memorizing ideas and principles and not moves. Because a lot of times the idea of the structure or the general idea of where that piece should be developed might be applicable on move 5 or move 15, right? And like that's kind of the way you want to approach it right now for your own sake.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm just going to kind of give you the basic outline again. It'll help a little bit, and then I think we'll take a step back for the remainder of the lesson. I want to give you a couple endgame positions to quiz you. Make sure you have some fundamental knowledge about a couple things, just to make sure. I feel like I have to check a box as a coach. So if they just defend the pawn, how are you handling that? Like, did we go over that at all?
If they just defend the pawn, I think I just try to keep developing. I'm not sure if it was moving the knight out, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Taking the pawn is the main line, and it's good.
Okay.
And typically, what you want to do from there is now start developing. The center has opened up, and you want to get your pieces out. There are several moves to do that, but the most common one is to develop the bishop with a tempo on the knight.
Right.
Now, in turn, when you've gained a tempo, they will often retreat and go right back at you.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's okay to move your bishop again. I know that is moving a piece twice in the opening, kind of, breaking of code, but obviously they've already moved a knight 3 times, so, pound for pound, both sides have one piece developed.
Yeah, it's sort of even. One
Right.
pawn out and one piece.
So now there's different ways this can go. Your next few moves in general are going to be knight out to f6, to play e6, which opens up the bishop. This knight will almost always just go to d7, right? And from there's a couple options. If you visualize this, the bishop can sometimes develop just simple to e7. Sometimes we actually forget developing the bishop in that position, and we emphasize getting the queen out so we can castle long and get some rook pressure on this pawn. That's an important concept because I'll make some random moves, not necessarily the best moves for either side. But I just want to show that sometimes a piece can be developed where it stands as long as it's not affecting the greater plan. If the greater plan involves castling short, then obviously we have to get this guy out, right?
Yeah.
But this bishop actually supports a move c5, and for the few viewers that have been here maybe all day while I've been streaming, we actually talked a lot about this structure and that this is an idea for black with Finton because he also plays the Caro-Kann.
Yeah, and we're already on it with the knight, so
yeah, you
we
got
could,
the knight and the bishop. So very often for black, moving the queen out, sometimes even to a5. She's kind of lonely on an island over there, but it's not not a horrible square, right? In some ways you control the 5th rank and, whatever. If you get attacked by like a wasted retreating move, you can go back to safety. No big deal, right? So queen a5 is fine. And in some ways, black will often try to castle long, where the rook is very useful. Sometimes, again, you can play bishop e7, and it's flexible. You might castle short. You might still just develop your queen, castle long, and play for c5. The main thing I imparted on Finton, I have to give you the same advice, is that this structure is called the Yaroslav structure. The reason, just focus on just those 3 pawns. Forget everything else and where they're at. Just that structure. It's called the Yaroslav because it can occur in both the Caro-Kann, as it is now, as well as in the Slav, the Queen's Gambit. In the Queen's Gambit, the main difference is that white doesn't have an E pawn gone, white has a C pawn gone. So imagine that pawn is over here, but otherwise it's actually the same pawn structure. In that structure, your idea is very, very often to liberate the position with c5. Whether you need a bunch of prep to do it, or castles long or things. In a Queen's Gambit, it looks different. But this is a very common way for you to kind of break through and try to equalize because white has a little more space here. So this is an idea to just kind of never forget.
Okay, yeah.
Cool?
Yep, got it.
Cool. So there you go. So that's a quick version. Let's do those move orders again. You play black and I'll play white. Just give you a chance to kind of, we're not really memorizing moves here, but I just want to let you kind of play it back and refresh yourself before you wreck yourself, There you go. Good stuff. Back up. So now I'm going to play a move that is actually the mainline theory. Last game I was giving you the ideas. Now I'm going to play this move that challenges you and see how you deal with my threat of h5.
Okay. At this point, do you want to stay on this diagonal, or do you not want to stay here? Like, you could do this,
very
right?
good move. That's the main move.
Okay. Yeah, because you don't really want to start running away from this diagonal again.
Yep.
It seems
you want to keep it.
That's going to take a long time.
Yeah. In fact, the main line goes h5.
And then we back up.
And then eventually, as I develop, now you go back to the developing plan I gave.
We develop our... This guy?
Yeah, that's fine. Again, knight f6 is probably the most common first move, but that's actually a fine move. e6 is fine. Again, like I said, the reason I like to give ideas of development and patterns rather than move orders is, one, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. Again, that's a big mistake people make. Like, change your mindset. Yes, you can check Opening Explorer. Run your game report where it gives you that little book icon and tells you what you're doing. But the main thing is, dude, like, the idea is very often interchangeable. As long as you are paying attention to the threats and don't blunder, you know, that's why I said the next 3 moves are probably these 3 moves. The order might actually change. And obviously, if someone played a move like this, like bishop b5, you'd probably take their bishop, right? I mean, like, that's the thing, right? But so e6 is fine. And what I was going to say is, the thing is, this bishop is so useful here that once you've gotten past my test of trying to trap it, often white will just surrender and say, all right, let's just trade it off.
Oh, yeah, because they don't want it.
Yep, because white's idea is also to castle long, and I don't want to leave that bishop as a monster poking at my queen side. So this is still mainline theory. So I play bishop d3, and you go ahead and play black.
I'll play this then.
You probably want to take it.
Is that wrong?
And the reason is that if I take you now, like, you end up having to do something bad. Like,
we have to step back, basically, because even going forward with the rook is a step back in a way, right?
It is, because the rook is like an awkward target here. Like, it's just not a good spot for the rook. Does that make sense?
I see.
It's not an open file. Like, you know, there's no future there. You know, you'd rather have the rooks be connected and healthy.
So in the case of that exchange being offered, we take it with the bishop there?
Yep, go for it.
Yeah. It's
your
I need
move. Go ahead.
Remove. I need to remove that move. There we go.
Oh, sorry, we weren't on the same position. My bad. There you go.
Yeah, for some reason I had a knight out still.
No, you're good. So now you continue with the normal stuff?
Yeah. So now this.
I'm not chewing gum, everybody. My apologies. It's almonds. Brain food.
They're good for you.
They're Waga approved.
Yeah, sure. Should I have thought about that when you play the bishop? Or is it...
You could. But I'm going to castle long anyway to defend.
I guess you castle... Yeah, you castle before I can do anything.
And again, the queen is kind of... She's not tilted out there, but there's a lack of a future, right? You don't want to go on a one-man mission.
Yeah.
So knight b7 makes sense.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily want the queen to be leading the way so much as getting the other pieces out first.
Yep. And then I castle long, and now I would actually say this is the best way. Just put the queen on c7.
Yeah.
And take a snapshot. This right here is a very good goal for you in this line in the Caro-Kann. This kind of position right here. You've got options. Bishop e7 and castle short. You could play for c5. You could castle long, which is part of the idea. I can't draw an arrow for some reason. You could castle long. It's a good spot for you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, our first line testing the exchange is done. Now we're going to go to the advanced. Did you guys look at this at all?
Yeah, we looked at it as well.
Okay.
If he pushes...
I'll send you the PGN that we're analyzing here. So, the record of the game. It'll just have... It's not going to be fancy. I won't make a bunch of notes, but I'll just get everything that viewers on my channel can see above Waga's head. All these variations here I'll give to you so you can go over later and just kind of remember the things I said and what to do.
What I think it was bishop moves out, but...
There's two very common moves here. A bishop f5 and c5 right away.
Oh, yeah.
c5 is a direct transposition into the French defense. Often after c5, c3, black can play e6, and we're in an advanced French. But the idea for black in this line, to kind of get better than the French, is to not play e6 and block the bishop. It's to get the bishop outside the pawn chain.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was thinking playing that next, because else it seems hard to get the bishop out.
Right. But the risk of that, to be careful about, the risk of that to be careful about is that white has moves like h4 in this position, where if you fall for a trap, they have g4, and your bishop is actually just trapped where it stands.
Oh, yeah.
So, the key thing to remember if they go for these ultra-aggressive lines is you can play with h5. You respond with it just to basically stop and slow down this idea. Okay?
Yep.
And then you can play e6 and try to play on the queen side again. I don't want to get too into this theory that's kind of advanced here unless we get close to Pog and you need some advice, because this is kind of like a really tricky, sharp line, and I don't want to overwhelm your brain. But so the main principle is you want to play for e6 and eventually go for c5. You're kind of playing for a French structure. Makes sense because whenever you have a pawn chain, you want to play in that direction of the board. It's always the natural space for your pieces to swim to. But it can also get really, really sharp here. And so the one thing I'll leave you with is if you've stopped this idea of g4 and they know what they're doing, they might actually go for an idea where they play for c4 now, which changes the position where you're not going to play for c5 yourself. In fact, in a lot of positions here, you'll eventually be taking their pawn and opening the d file to play against the d pawn here. What's funny is it's actually not hard for you to know, because if this structure ever happens, it's kind of similar to the Yaroslav structure we were talking about, except that this e-pawn is so far up. But it's very similar in that you've got a target on d4, and often you're going to try to play for c5 to liberate and change the pawn structure. So it's actually not a hard idea for you to kind of remember, even if the move order is a little tricky.
Yeah, it's the same synergy between the pawn and the knight and bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. So against the advance, you're going to play bishop f5. If they play h4, don't let your bishop get trapped, play h5. If they play g4 right away, you can play bishop back to g6. Oh, sorry. No, actually, I just caught myself in a trap. I was remembering a different line. In this line, if they commit g4, you actually go back to d7.
Okay.
And the reason is, in this particular
They've just
order,
weakened.
they have this, and they're still trying to trap, so you try to give the bishop freedom, but they have this crazy line where they play e6 and sacrifice it, and then bishop d3, and you actually get in a ton of trouble on the light squares here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because even if we take their bishop, they come down with a queen?
Yep.
I guess?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you give them a couple more moves, the knight pops into e5, and we got a serious problem.
No, we don't want that. No. Nothing like that.
Yeah, we don't want anything like that. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's a good lesson. If they go for this line and they play g4, you have to come back, which is... So here's what the debate is now. Now, you're not going to get the bishop outside the pawn chain. If they do things, you'll have to play e6 and leave the bishop here. But they've also wasted a little bit of time with this move g4 that could potentially be weakening for their king. So you'll play e6 and eventually... Not that. No, you'll play e6 and eventually play c5... Knight c6, queen b6. This is kind of the idea in this pawn chain, to bring your pieces to this side of the board where you have the potential for everyone to play together. Is this looking a little familiar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this looks like it makes sense as well, that you're going behind your own pawn chain.
Yeah. Yeah, playing in the direction of your pawn chain, and your pieces playing behind your pawns so they have more space rather than in front.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the moment, I mean, it doesn't look bad to me that they would push their g-pawn. Like, we don't feel bad about that, because that side now looks like not an option to castle on even.
Yeah, well, the Caro-Kann is this line of the Caro-Kann can get very weird, because if you go for this, sometimes they go like all in with things like this, where they are over-defending their center to make sure that it stays closed. Because if it does stay closed, sometimes they'll even play moves like king f2. And basically, like, it's a weird position. They're literally playing for an attack, even with their king on that side of the board. Right? It's a mess. But this is very risky for them, because one of the things you end up doing is you go, okay, now you've committed. You're fully pot committed. Here I come. I'll play f6. I'm going to open up all the dark squares, because if everything starts getting traded, like, the white king is just in huge trouble.
He's got to be in line of fire for a lot of bishops.
Exactly,
and
and that means you own the tension. So I always say the tension thing in chess is the person who owns the tension is the person who gets more squares available to their pieces if the trades start happening. So again, I'll say that again. Like, the person who owns the tension in chess is the person whose options are increasing if the trades happen. And if you are the one who owns the tension, you build on that tension. You don't break it. You build it, and you build it because you want them to break and let the dam flow. So, like, a good example of that, forget the moves but like, okay, this is a very good example. You own the tension, because if they ever take, you get more squares for your pieces, and you're opening up the king, so they don't want to, right? So that allows another move to be available for black. In some ways, they want to play here, but the pawn hangs, so they play another move to defend. And in this moment here, you've got tension here, you've got tension here, so then you play the move g5. This is actually a mainline idea. Crazy ownership of the tension. If they take here, you take here. And you're actually you're opening up the middle area of the board to go after the king.
Yeah, it's all opening up.
And if they take here, you take here, like intermezzo, and then you get your pawn back, and you're just opening up the board under the idea that their king is going to be like a sitting duck. And g5 is like a thematic idea, like in the French too. So anyway, this is a weird pawn tension. Very, very often we teach pawn tension like, forget the fact that you can take. I'm just gonna show like an idea with rooks and pawns. Forget the move order here. I'm just setting something up. So like this is a good example. If you just look at just these 4 pawns and the rook tension. This happens in a lot of games where white owns the tension because at some point white might even take and try to dominate the A file. But black is like never going to take, because if black ever takes, white captures back and black is just left with a horrible, weak, isolated pawn. Right?
Yeah.
So what white does in the meantime is things like queen. They double rooks on the A file. They build up on the tension, waiting for the right moment to break. So that's a very simple example of how we might teach pawn tension sometimes.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely recognized that pattern of tension on the A and the H file, that it's very often whoever takes first, basically, matters a lot with the rooks, because the rooks are going to follow up.
Yeah. And that's a common idea to just it's easy to recognize sometimes with rooks because the open file is such a it's like a challenge, right? But we want to apply those concepts to other areas of the board with pawn tension if you can. And as a less experienced player, as you're getting better, the more patience you have there. Very often what inexperienced players are more likely to do is to trade prematurely, right? They'll get tension and they'll either take, or like Matthew in the last game, he pushed c4 instead of maintaining that tension like he should have, right?
Yeah.
And that's
just
actually
he closed the position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He closed it and actually relieved your position and gave you that e4 option in that last game, remember? So it's another good example of that. So it's just something to try to recognize. You'll make this mistake, but it's just a good thing to recognize in general. Don't be afraid of the tension. And it sounds crazy that I'm about to say this, but almost always, universally, when it comes to pawn tension, the first person to blink is making a mistake, whether that's a take or a push. And that's a very hard blanket thing to say, because certainly if someone builds up properly and if you're taking and you're winning material, whatever. But most of the time, especially when it's being used in an instructive way, the first person who broke the tension, either by pushing to release or trading, was actually conceding something, and they shouldn't have. So it's just that's the kind of extreme to think of. All right, the last line in the Kiro to give you is the takes.
And then take back with the pawn.
For sure. So this is the easiest one, because probably at this level, if people take, they're just going to start developing, and you're going to develop, and they're going to develop, and you don't even need to try to get the bishop out. Honestly, you can just focus on getting developed, being very solid. The knight can come here. And the reason that's funny is because in this situation, a good example of thinking about the whole and not just the individual piece. Yes, the optics of this bishop kind of stink, but if you actually look at where the pawn chain is facing and what diagonals you have, that bishop actually has a future, even on a simple square. And so what's funny in lines like this, here's a plan that this reminds me of a Yaroslav structure, like a bishop. We'll just do something here just to show how this line might go. At some point, this bishop is actually supporting what we call a minority attack, which is 2 versus 3, where you can kickstart all of your pawns attacking on this side of the board. There's other ways too, sometimes a bishop there just has other plans, which is the knight comes out, the rook comes to the c file, eventually you put the knight in and the bishop comes out. So the point is, don't always judge whether a piece is developed in terms of its optical activity, but whether it's a part of your greater plan. And your greater plan can often be playing in the direction of your pawn structure, recognizing where your files are, where your chances of gaining space are. So sometimes people get themselves in trouble by going out of their way to be aggressive with a developing move, and then I go here, and you either have to give me the bishop pair, which means
Yeah, that looks like something I would do.
right?
Yeah.
Or you back up and you might get in trouble with like a big pawn storm where you've given some time. This is actually kind of a common idea where white could be a little bit better because you might be thinking, well, yeah, he's committed. He can't castle short, but he doesn't need to. He can develop quickly and castle long, and he's actually got a really great chance of an attack because you gave him all these tempi.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, I'm oversimplifying it, but just to drive the point home of don't think about where your pieces are optically all the times in terms of judging them individually, but whether you have a plan and whether they're serving a greater purpose in that plan. Okay, so this is a pretty easy one. The one line that can make this tricky is if they know the Panov Botvinnik. If I'm, like, I play the Panov Botvinnik when I'm white. So if someone plays the Caro against me, I take and play C4. This is the Panov Botvinnik. This can get sharp. So how would you play this way?
I'd probably do this.
Boom. Awesome. Good. Good stuff.
Not sure. Maybe this.
Okay. Great stuff. That's totally fine. You can also keep that option open and play knight to c6. You can also play g6. I'm going to give you a specific suggestion here, and as a coach, I like to focus a lot on principles, and because especially if I don't really know that I'm going to have a lesson every week with this particular student, and really, put in that time, I'm afraid to give you like dogmatic advice or like be like inserting my personality. But I will say this, like regardless of big principles, I think that this is a good line for beginners to play and learn against the Panov Botvinnik. And the reason is, if I was to choose your repertoire, commit to this line just against the Panov Botvinnik, is because what ends up happening to the Panov Botvinnik is an IQP. Do you know what that stands for?
No.
Isolated Queen Pawn. I was just testing whether you remembered things from mine and Robert's World Championship coverage. You failed, you failed by the way.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Damn it.
No, I'm kidding. So an IQP, for those who don't speak French, is isolated queen pawn. An IQP structure is going to occur in a Panov Botvinnik, which means black will have a target to attack because it's an isolated pawn. It has no defenders of pawns anyway. But it also always gives white like a very big like lead in development. So in an IQP, like white ends up with a lot of activity, and the rooks come in, and it can get very tactical. One of the things that happens in an IQP is often white uses those tactics to kind of leapfrog to a kingside attack. And the reason I like the fianchetto is because this is a very solid structure and hard to break down. It's very safe for your king, and the bishop is naturally right where you want it in an IQP, which is targeting the d4 pawn. So g6 is a great line. Often they will take, and you'll ignore it. Actually, you'll just develop because you're going to win this pawn back anyway. It's not going anywhere. So here's like a main line that happens here. They try to defend the pawn, and then you go knight d7 and knight b6, and eventually they run out of ways to defend this pawn, and you end up winning it back. So this is and it's a very solid and good line for you. It's very safe. The bishop is right where it needs to be, and yeah. So I would suggest you play g6 against the Panov Botvinnik.
Yeah.
That cool?
All right. Yep.
Okay. By the way, if you forget and you ever play e6 in a game, it's no big deal. Like, you can develop the bishop to e7, and the issue if you don't take is at some point what the Panov structure does is the Panov structure, if you've waited this long not to take, is they'll play c5, and now if you just took a snapshot of the queen side, who wins the endgame?
Oh yeah, this looks better for white.
Right? And the normal thing, like the thing I taught you to play against Matthew's c4 was to play for e4, right? Mm-hmm. In this position, the reason the Panov structure is dangerous is white actually owns the center right now. So they have both the positional majority, a 3-on-2, and you're not in a great spot to kind of break back against it. It's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
So this is a very sharp line, but I just recommend, rather than go for that, where they get a Panov structure, or having to go for the IQP to avoid that, meaning you had to take the pawn to avoid it, I like suggesting g6 because it's very safe, and if they try to go for this now, your bishop is actually in a great spot to play like knight e4 and bust open the center with e5. Like they're not able to hold the pawn chain together because the bishop is so dominant on that dark square diagonal. So we're getting a little specific, and I'm oversimplifying some, but the main goal is g6 is a super solid approach to an IQP, hard to attack. The bishop is ideally placed, and this is going to be, just for now, while you're practicing the Karagan, try to commit to that approach, commit to these weapons, because even if it's not perfect to start, you make some mistakes, forget some ideas. The sooner you just commit to the repertoire and start getting the same types of positions, the same types of tactics over and over again, right, the faster your growth is this week as you get ready for Pog.
Yeah, I think that's very useful. I think it's good to have some specific stuff because I'm gonna try at least now for the next 2 days or so. I'm gonna try to play these openings and get used to stuff. So it's good to have some specific knowledge about it.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, so we've talked about white London. We've talked about Caro. Last one to give you a quick quiz on. What are you doing against d4 as black?
I would probably just try to stop it from pushing.
Okay, so you just play the queen's pawn.
Yeah.
At this level, this is the simplest stuff. Simplest stuff to do. If they play the queen's gambit, which is like I said, so you already know yourself, you're learning the London, right? Bishop f4 here. So there's different weapons there. You can kind of take the advice and the compliments I gave Matthew. If someone played a London against you, I would suggest looking for playing for the early c5 lines. Be aggressive on the dark squares since they're not playing the queen's gambit like Matthew did. Just don't play his c4, right? Keep that tension and build on it. If they play a queen's gambit traditionally, probably the best suggestion is to just play like a Slav. And again, this is going to help because you're going to get like a Karo Slav. You're probably going to get a pawn structure that's right up your alley, right? From a pattern recognition standpoint.
Yeah. I think Levy said that as well, that, it's a good complementary to the Karo is the Slav.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good compliment. 100%. And after that, the one piece of advice I'll give here, because I've given it to a couple other people that I've coached, because kind of everyone at this level is just playing the queen's pawn game, is don't get obsessed with the bishop needing to come out behind the pawn chain. Okay? It can be a very big mistake to do it because you actually leave your queenside light squares behind, and tactics can occur right away. I'll give you one example of an infamous trap. So you play this move thinking, well, I know I should play e6, but why block my bishop if I don't have to, right? So this is how you'd be thinking, right?
For
now
sure.
Now they take. They take, and you're like, well, I don't want to take with the knight, because the whole idea of the queen's gambit was they were going to get a big center. So if I take with the knight instead of the pawn, I've kind of surrendered that, which is true. You'd be positionally worse. So you take with the pawn. But now they play queen b3, and they're attacking the pawn. And here are your bad options. You're like, I could defend with the queen on c7 or c8, but that loses d5. You actually lose a pawn. I could defend on d7 with the queen, but now knight e5, and now I'm really in trouble. Now I for sure lose a pawn because I can't defend both of these pawns anymore. So there's no queen d7, no queen c7. You don't want to back up the bishop to c8 because you've already developed it, right? That just feels like a waste of time. And it is bad. It is a waste of time. So your only logical move is to play b6, right?
Yeah.
We're heading down a logical road of mistakes. But now they play bishop g5, threatening to take the knight and win the pawn. So you play e6, you think you've achieved your goal. I've defended my center, and my bishop isn't blocked. Yay, right? White is actually winning by force in this position. It's a famous opening trap. They play the move e4 exclam, gaining a tempo. So you have to do something about the piece, either move it or take. You might as well take. Bishop b5 check. Your only move is knight d7. You can't block with this knight, you'll lose the queen.
Yeah.
And they play knight e5, and you're losing on the spot. Because there's no way to stop me from eliminating this knight and then winning this knight for free on the next move. And it's all because of you had one simple sin, which is that the bishop should have stayed put. And it's all because of that you lose. So this is actually a very common idea that a mistake people make in Slavs, is they get obsessed with the development of the bishop rather than just surrender to what I said earlier, which is it's not always about the optics of the individual piece, but whether they're a part of the greater good, the greater plan. And in this position, you'll play e6, and you should actually just play like almost the Karo Khan moves that I said, like develop develop the bishop, develop the knight, get castled, and at some point the center breaks when you decide to take and then play things like b5 and bishop here, where eventually you're going to get, again, just snapshot, what structure do we have? The Yaroslav structure.
Exactly. And the same thing, the bishop and knight supporting the break.
Yep. Yeah. And you're going to get it. They can't really stop it. So you will get equality. It's just a thing that a lot of beginner players have trouble surrendering to, is that eventually you will not only get equality, but you could be in a good shape, but you just can't develop your bishop to f5. Like, don't make that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just instead play e6, and that'll be the main piece of Queen's Gambit advice that I'll give you.
Okay, yeah. That sounds good.
Cool. All right, so look at that. We made a lot of progress here.
We have. This is good stuff.
So, I don't know if you know this, but everything we just did can actually be saved pretty instantly. I'm going to move your camera so that the people watching can see. I can easily just grab the PGN with this button here, and I'm going to give it to Waga. I click that, and then I can grab the PGN in the game so that I can. Do you know what a PGN file is?
No. Is it a replay, basically?
Yes, it stands for Portable Game Notation in chess.
Okay.
So on Twitter, I can in our DM that we had, I'll go give it to you.
Oh, great.
Give it to you right now. So it's kind of a big file, but if you Control A and like copy that whole thing into like, you just go to chess.com/analysis and paste that, or you can go back to live chess and make an analysis board like we did here. You can go over all of these lines that we did from this lesson. Like, you could do it on a stream and just kind of be like, go through the moves. And I didn't write down, obviously I wasn't sitting here typing the ideas, so you will have to do a little bit of kind of visual audio memory of why that variation was there. Like, don't confuse bad variations in there for good ones, right? Because some of the ones I showed you were just like the ways not to play. Like, like Bishop F5, yeah. Right? You got that? Okay, cool.
Yep.
But there you go. So you can review that stuff later.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Well, what's up now? Now what do we do?
I don't know. I teach you Dota.
Dude. So my kids would love that. They
How old are your kids, by the way?
My kid, again, 14 and 11.
Okay, yeah.
And they play a lot of like CS:GO and like, I don't know, Call of Duties. I don't know, like they play Fortnite, like all the other Snickers-eating American youth who don't know what's good for them. You know, they waste their crap time with Fortnite and junk food.
Wasting their
Fortnite
skills.
Is like the junk food of the first-person shooter world.
Yeah, I can get
that?
behind that.
You can steal that and use it for me. You can steal that and use it. Because I just made it up. It's like the Snickers of the first-person shooter world. You know?
I can agree with that. Wasting their skills when they could play something strategic like Dota.
Exactly. You know? Maybe one day we could do dual streams and do like the chess Dota game. I don't know that chess Dota is really very much like chess or like Dota, but it is a game apparently.
Oh yeah, the auto chess. Unfortunately, auto chess is unfortunately nothing like chess apart from having a checkered board. That's literally it has the chess board basically. It was a bit fun. It got a lot of people to install Dota and play that. Yeah, it was successful at it.
Okay, so Fortnite is not the junk food of first-person shooter, because you're right, and I know the difference between first-person shooter and other games. It's the junk food of what is it? The battle royale games, right? Like the battlegrounds games, like all the games where you get like dropped somewhere and you shoot people up, like whatever that is, right?
Yeah, it's not really my type of game. I'm too old and slow, you know. I don't have the twitchy reflexes to.
Yeah, I literally like stopped playing that game when I couldn't get over a hill. Like I literally could not get over a hill in Fortnite. I couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
So
it's too much building for me. I looked at what people do who are good at it. It's just a lot of quick building, and it just feels like such a weird mini game. If I was to play a shooter, I would rather play something team oriented like CS:GO or something.
Yeah. But. All right, well, I can say what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to end my stream now with our lesson, and I'm going to raid our own chess channel, because I'm going to go right from here, to the other room in my studio where we have our big and like professional. This is like my personal office within our building that we own here. And
Yeah.
we're gonna do a stateofchess.com show. This is a show I only do once a quarter where I go over like, it's kind of like an AMA. I answer the hard hitting questions like all the cheating in chess, explain features, go over some tough stuff. So I'm actually doing our quarter two. I'm doing our quarter two review, stateofchess.com, starting in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to raid that, take a break, and then go over there.
I have one quick question then that kind of goes along the same thing there. My girlfriend asked, since there's a lot of videos of like Hikaru or Levy or other people playing from like 1,000 and up, is there a general opinion on smurfing in chess? Because in Dota, it's like,
as
people
long
hang
as
you
it's
for
open, as long as it's open, it's not frowned upon. If you're doing it secretly, like it's frowned upon.
Okay.
Like if you're like a grandmaster, in fact, we prevent that on our site. In fact, then some grandmasters have complained to me. I got closed on this anonymous account, and I look at it. I'm like, well, you went from 1,000 to 2,000, and we closed. Like, you're welcome for us doing our job because most people who are doing that in like a day are cheating. And they're about to start taking points from grandmasters. So we tell them, like, you're welcome. It's not my fault. You didn't tell us who you were. Now, obviously, we're good at that. We check IP addresses. We can kind of tell that someone's smurfing. But even then, we warn them and say, hey, multi-accounting and smurfing is against the rules. But in this streamer kind of hyper culture where content is king, we've pretty much come around to embracing it. Because speedruns are also very popular in chess. Like going from 1,000 to 2,000 and going whatever all the way up. So I think that chess has kind of embraced the Smurf speedrun culture as long as it's public. If people are trying to do it consistently secretly, then it's frowned upon, and actually, like, we will close you if you do it like against our will consistently. But like when Hikaru hits us up, like we're not gonna tell him no, because like it's actually proven to be like super popular and people think it's awesome as long as everyone knows what he's doing and it's public.
Yeah, in a way, it's instructional for the people who want to watch.
Yeah.
You know, to some degree, it's definitely entertaining, and it can be interesting to watch. What mistakes they find, because Levy did. I know his series. He very much talks about like what mistakes are being made. He's not just out there crushing noobs and going like, "I'm
for sure."
So at that point, I can see why. That's interesting to hear. It's pretty much the opposite in Dota.
Interesting.
If you do it publicly and people know about it, then you get hate. Like I was the public enemy #1 basically on the Dota Reddit for smurfing on my stream. And the funny part is I was at a point where I was pretty high up in ranking, and for me to find a game took on average 1 hour. I had to queue for 1 hour before I find one game to play, and the game lasts for like 45 minutes. So if I stream for 8 hours, I would basically be queuing for 4 hours. So it was too bad for me, because that was the average queue time. I had some queues that were literally long enough that I could watch Titanic and not be done finding a game. And I'm like, you know what? That's not worth it for me.
Right.
So
exactly.
I smurfed because I wanted to play.
Right.
But that made me the public enemy. However, the people who are competitive players or like super good players who smurf way more than me even, but don't stream it, because I streamed it, right? Like they're completely fine.
That's
we almost have the
culture.
opposite.
I feel like it should be the opposite. I feel like the whole reason to do it is to see the process of a great player going from the bottom to the top. Right, doing it also, privately is almost like that's the chess world. It's like it's seen as unethical. Like, why are you doing that, right? In fact, I see comments in chat now thinking it's streamer privilege. It's not really streamer privilege, but yeah, it kind of is, in the sense that if you're not trying to keep it hidden and doing something unethical and taking advantage of people, you're promoting it and doing it in an educational way. It is. So yes, if you make it public, it is something that we're okay with. If you're doing it in a way that feels like it's taking advantage because you're clearly better than others and you're doing it secretly, it feels wrong. And it's actually not even good for our elo system, because it kind of deflates things a little bit, which is why even Hikaru doesn't do it all the time, because we're like, guys, this is like we want you to do it. It's fun. It's instructive. It's promotional content. But overall, like, and even then, we've actually pushed people to use smurfing names that are like something on Twitch or something on, like, it makes it like very clear even on chess.com, like, oh, something, this is like a special thing, right? And in general, I think the overwhelming reception is very positive. And again, and I think it's because we've embraced the public nature of it and not the secret nature of it. So anyway, man, I actually am getting pinged. I need to raid chess and get ready.
Sorry for holding you up. That was
no,
very
not at all.
interesting.
I wish we could keep going. I got like 8 hours of straight content today, so I'm going right into that.
Awesome.
All right, well, everyone
right,
who's here, I really appreciate it. If you've been here from the beginning, please help and stick around. We're going to raid the /chess channel, and I'll see you over there watching, maybe, and we're going to be doing a stateofchess.com, and we ask and answer a lot of hard questions and do some fun stuff. So, Niklas, you're the man. Let's do another one before the event starts.
Yeah, we'll meet up again and do some more coaching. That was great.
All right.
Thank
Cool,
you.
man.
Thank you for this session, man, and have fun with your AMA style stuff.
Yeah, should be fun. Hopefully. Sometimes it gets rough. We'll see. So.
Yeah. All right.
All right, man. See ya. All right, we're raiding. Niklas is still with me, but I'll be raiding and there's
I'm gonna hop out. See
What?
ya. I'm gonna hop out. See ya.
This is funny. All right, man. See ya.